From Tel Aviv to Tehran to the Middle East, the war is escalating. It's even spilling over into the Indian Ocean now. There are multiple locations across Iran that are being bombarded. Tehran is carrying out these retaliatory attacks across the region. It has spilled over very close to India, and that is concerning. How far and wide can this war actually go if it drags on for as long as United States President Donald Trump claims it would? It's a war that's gone beyond the traditional stakeholders. It was the Israel and United States coalition on one side, Iran on the other. Both sides are engaging ferociously. Nobody wants to let it go just yet. They're ready to drag this on for as long as their objectives are achieved. What those objectives are, how clear they are, one does not know, because there seems to be a lot of flip-flop coming in from the United States side especially. Can either sides afford to drag this on for as long as they want? Do they have the capability, both militarily and economically? That's something that we'll try and decode.
We are just getting started. We are accelerating, not decelerating. Iran's capabilities are evaporating by the hour, while American strength grows fiercer, smarter, and utterly dominant. More bombers and more fighters are arriving just today. The two most powerful air forces in the world will have complete control of Iranian skies, uncontested airspace. I hope all the folks watching understand what uncontested airspace and complete control means. It means we will fly all day, all night, day and night, finding, fixing, and finishing the missiles and defense industrial base of the Iranian military, finding and fixing their leaders and their military leaders. Yesterday, in the Indian Ocean, and we'll play it on the screen there, an American submarine sunk an Iranian warship that thought it was safe in international waters. Instead, it was sunk by a torpedo. Quiet death. The first sinking of an enemy ship by a torpedo since World War II. We sunk their prize ship, the Soleimani. Looks like POTUS got him twice.
So there is a dramatic and lethal escalation of the broadening of West Asia conflict. The Iranian Navy frigate Iris Dena was struck not too far away from Sri Lanka. It was approximately 40 nautical miles south of Galle in Sri Lanka. The incident marks the first major naval casualty of the US-Iran-Israel war, and that too far away from where the war actually is happening. This is deep in the waters of the Indian Ocean. In fact, the video has just been released and put out by the Secretary of War, by the Department of War of the United States. This is that thermal imaging video that has been released of the attack. What we have learned here is that this is a dangerous spillover into India's primary maritime backyard. What this really means, that's something that we'll decode with our experts who join us on this broadcast. But to give you a sense of what exactly transpired, and that's something that has been confirmed by Pete Hegseth as well, that Iris Dena was transiting homeward via the standard westward route following its high-profile participation in a multinational naval exercise, including India. This happened just a few weeks ago, but it comes at a time when there are Iranian claims of a missile hit on a US Navy destroyer in the same region, which is why the timing is crucial. This sinking of the ship appears to be a direct signal to Tehran that Iranian ships are no longer safe. That is what the Secretary of War of the United States also had to say, that even on distant transit routes far away from where this is playing out in the Persian Gulf, even there Iranian assets are not safe. In fact, we are getting details of what exactly has happened, how it is that Sri Lanka is also looking at what has transpired, and I'm just going to give you a sense of how Sri Lanka is looking at this. In fact, this is a tweet that has just been put out by Naval Rajapakse, who's gone on to say that what has happened off the coast of Galle is extremely serious. Reports indicate over 100 Iranian personnel are missing in what appears to be a submarine attack just outside our waters, which is a major security concern. So it's a concern for Sri Lanka, it's a concern for India as well. If military activity of this scale is happening so close to Sri Lanka, the government cannot treat this as someone else's problem. Does this mean that there are other countries, including Sri Lanka, including India, that are getting dragged into this particular war, a war that we didn't start, a war that we have no stakes in, and the war that we don't know what really the end game of it is? Commander V.K. Jaitley, a defense expert, joins us on this broadcast. Commander Jaitley, I want to get in your input on this. You must have seen that video as well of what transpired. So first, I want to talk about exactly what happened. The kind of narrative that we're seeing from the American side, and the Secretary of War, they're going on to say that looks like United States has got Iran twice over. Is that something that should concern the Iranian side? and everyone else that seems to be standing with it?
See, US and Israel, as they were saying that they have already controlled the total skies above the Iranian country. Now they want to control the ocean also, the Persian Gulf as well as the Gulf of Oman, both, and Strait of Hormuz, which Iran said we will close it. Now, if you see, the navy of the Iran is not very strong. They have hardly around 100 ships. Submarines, definitely they have got some 20 plus submarines, but only 7 frigates, no destroyers, some corvettes, very small ships. So overall, if you see, they are no match with what US has. The 2 aircraft carriers, the biggest ones, Abraham Lincoln and Griffith. Now, keeping all these things in mind, this killing of a ship, today morning the news was they have already sunk 17 ships of the Iranian Navy, 17. Just imagine. That means almost 20% of their navy is already finished. And with this one additional, which is with their torpedo, which they say after the Second World War, the first time with torpedo they have hit a ship. I don't know how far it is true, because in India, in 71 war, we did use torpedoes very much. And Pakistani Navy also used it. So maybe US Navy for the first time they may have used after the Second World War. That's quite possible. But fact remains that 20% of the Iranian Navy has been finished. And probably as far as their missile stocks are concerned, that has been finished more than 20% already. And now they are aiming for their manufacturing facilities also, so that they are not able to manufacture anymore. So I think it's a matter of time how far Iran can pull on. But yes, they are in a very bad shape as of now.
Now we're talking about the extent of where this is actually going, Commander, which is why I want to ask you this. You know, this is where the war really started. This was the Persian Gulf. That is where we've seen all of this being concentrated in, at least for the first 4 days. The Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, that is where all of this was targeted. Far away from there, here is where we're at. This is where this is how far away we're at from the war where it's actually taking place. This is about 40 nautical miles away from Galle, which is a port city in Sri Lanka. That is where this particular sinking of the submarine has taken place. If you look at where exactly the war was playing out, which is here in the Persian Gulf, which is here near the Strait of Hormuz, which is now blocked, from there to come in here all the way, what kind of concern is that for India and India's maritime interests as well?
Yeah, I just happened to be there at Galle just 15 days back. So I'm also surprised what was the business for them to come all the way this side, because they don't have any job to be in this area. They should be near the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, in that area. So why they have come, I'm myself in a fix to think why they came all the way this side. But definitely, US keeps its submarines across all over the world, let me tell you, all over the world they have. So they keep a watch, but definitely they cannot get into the exclusive economic zone of any country, which is 200 kilometers or 200 nautical miles, in fact. So they should not be coming there. 200 nautical miles, around 370 kilometers. So they have no business to enter the exclusive economic zone of any country. They don't have. So it can go to the international court also if they have entered exclusive economic zone of any country and then done this job.
Commander, I request you to stay on with us because a lot of these norms and rules are clearly being thrown to the wind. Does Donald Trump, does United States, Israel actually care about sticking to any of these norms? That's another point of discussion altogether. But I do want to also introduce our two other guests who join us on this broadcast. Owen Alterman is a diplomatic correspondent with I-24 News. Errol Morcoach is also joining us. He's a senior spokesman of Republican Overseas. And I want to get in Mr. Alterman first. I understand that just a few minutes before you were to join us, there were sirens that were blaring once again. You had to take cover. That seems to be routine, at least for the last 4 days or so. What exactly seems to be the situation at the moment? And what is the sense that you're getting on ground? For how long is this going to go on?
We'll start with the Israeli home front. You're right. We're used to this, sadly. There are people who have been killed. There are people who have been injured. There are people who had property destroyed. For 99.9% of the rest of us, we've just been going through the drills, changing our lives, changing our routines, going to the shelters, coming back, learning what the procedures are of our home front command for letting us know what to do. You're right. We've been used to this over the 4 days of this war, but we've also become used to used to this over the 2.5 years of war since October 7th, understanding the different kinds of alerts from different fronts, whether they be from the Gaza Strip, which thankfully the rocket fire has been long behind us, or from Lebanon, or from Yemen, so far dormant over the course of this war, and obviously most recently from Iran. I can say the morale here is very, very high in here in Israel. There's a sense that we are winning. There's a sense that we're making progress. Obviously, stateside in Washington, we heard the press conference of Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. That's certainly his sense. But obviously, there's a recognition here of the complexity. There's a recognition here of the amorphous nature of the end game, of how many different scenarios could play out. So obviously, there's an optimism, but it is still a cautious optimism.
We did speak with the Foreign Minister of Israel just a short while ago here on CNN News 18, and he told us that Israel and the United States are ready to be in this for the long haul, for it to continue for as long as it takes, because the end game is to ensure that there is regime change in Iran, and that will be achieved. But can Israel continue? Can they afford to continue for as long as this would go on for?
Well, first, it's wonderful to hear that Foreign Minister Gideon Saar did an interview with you. It's wonderful that he's out there. India is obviously an incredibly important country and partner for Israel. It feels so long ago that Prime Minister Modi came on his visit here. But it was, of course, just last week. And we all remember those pictures. And here in Israel, remember what we felt seeing that, especially so deep into a war, which, of course, we're even deeper into now. Look, in terms of the home front, there is obvious staying power. In terms of the military and Israel's diplomatic arena, obviously, we have to wait and see. This is a country that wants to go as far as it can in Iran, as far as it can in terms of hitting Iran's military assets, as far as it can in hitting Iranian political and leadership targets, and of course, as far as it can in actually bringing down and taking the regime down. Will all of those goals be achieved? Will the most maximalist vision of this war be achieved? That is, of course, what we don't know. In terms of the stamina of the public is obviously there, has been for a long time. We've suffered for a very long time from Iran and the octopus arms of its proxies, from Gaza to Lebanon to ones we hadn't known before in Yemen and elsewhere. So this is a country that is interested in doing it. To what extent are the goals achievable is, of course, the unknown of this war.
Now, I ask you to stay on with us because we're talking about what the United States and Israel together are doing. And I want to get in Erol Morkoch as well. Thank you so much for joining us here on CNN News 18. We just heard the Secretary of War there go on to say, and President Trump has reiterated that on multiple occasions as well, that we are in this for the long haul. For as long as it takes to change the regime in Iran, we are ready to do so. Now, Israel has hinted at putting boots on ground. Is the United States also wanting to do that, open to doing that?
The United States is not wanting to do that. Of course, we never take anything off the table. When you are the United States of America, you always have to have your cards in your deck. But the idea is not to put boots on the ground, or American boots on the ground, besides special forces. And of course, there's maybe more interest in regional allies, inspiring the Kurds or inspiring certain uprisings around there. If there's going to be boots on the ground in Iran, that would be a political disaster for President Trump. So that is not the American goal as of this time.
But if it comes to that, would that be the case if Israel pushes you to do that? Because Israel is ready to put boots on ground, because they say that the only way to see the logical conclusion to this conflict that was started 5 days ago, to this war that was started 5 days ago, is that the regime changes there. And if putting boots on ground is what it takes, then that's what it takes.
Well, unfortunately, the world has a lot of people who want America to do things for them. And Israel is a great ally of the United States, but it's also a proxy for the U.S. military power in that region. And so Israel is, of course, directing what they want to happen. And we are, in most cases, aligned with Israel's stated goals. When it comes to things going as far as that, though, President Trump is in charge. President Trump is not going to put boots on the ground in an unnecessary way. Now, in a disaster scenario, let's say nuclear bomb shot at the U.S. Army or U.S. Air Force or something in the region, some sort of catastrophic event, okay. But in the current circumstances right now, Trump is very hawkish on strikes and very dovish on invasions. And of course, Israel isn't pushing or pulling the United States to do anything. They're our ally and our friend and somebody we're working with.
But as far as this conflict is concerned, Mr. Morkoch, I want to ask you this, because the most recent spillover seems to be in the Indian Ocean region, far away from where the actual conflict is going on. I mean, the world seems to be at risk.
The cowardly Iranian Navy should be around the area of the warfare. Instead, they're going around conducting exercises because they're too weak and ineffective to do anything. And the United States Navy will hunt them down around the world and destroy them, along with our Israeli and other partners in that endeavor. But the Iranians certainly don't have any reason to be driving frigates around the Cape of Africa and into the Indian Ocean. The United States guarantees maritime security. The U.S. Government is actually going to guarantee the insurance of shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, which is going to, of course, offset Lloyd's of London domination of that situation. So I think very sternly, the United States is sending a message that there's no Iranian ship or submarine or asset that is safe anywhere in the world. And if they think they can hide under the cover of international water, we will prove to them that we own that international water.
Owen Alterman, if Israel and the United States were to take this message around that the world is on one side and Iran's on the other, and anything that Iran touches would be dust, then that's going to be problematic for the rest of the world as well. Is Israel prepared to go with that particular strategy of the United States? Because like Mr. Morkoch was also pointing out, that on certain things, they seem to be on the same page, but on some certain things, they don't see eye to eye.
Well, first of all, you're absolutely right about that. I mean, Mr. Morkoch used the word proxy in one part, an ally in another part. Israel certainly doesn't see itself as a proxy of the United States, but very, very much as an ally of the United States. And Donald Trump continues to be wildly popular here for obvious reasons, including among people who don't share other parts of his worldview and are otherwise skeptical of his personality and his political style. They certainly love his policies and love the way he executes them and loves the way he sells them. In terms of the geographic spread of this, you're absolutely right to focus on that, especially from an Indian perspective and especially given the development today off the coast of Sri Lanka. The reality is it's been the Iranian side that has expanded the geographic scope of this war, much more so than the U.S. and Israeli side, a geographic scope that now extends from Cyprus, of course, all the way to Sri Lanka. But much of that was Iran's doing in terms of attacking the Gulf states, which have become a kind of center of gravity in the diplomatic arena of this war. And the fact that those countries have bought in so many ways, both financially, but much more importantly, in terms of what they have symbolized in terms of their human development, so much soft power around the world, the fact that they've been targeted by Iran, I think has very, very much helped Israel's diplomatic effort in Europe and in the United States in terms of generating support for a war from understandably skeptical publics. In terms of Asia, obviously, the hits to oil supplies, I would imagine, would be an enormous concern for the Indian government and obviously further afield for the Chinese government and more broadly for the world economy. At some point, I would imagine that would be an enormous factor into how this war will play out, how publics will look at it, how the U.S. alliance structure will look in Asia. We're much more focused right now on U.S. public opinion and on Europe. But you're right, the geographic scope of Asia is something that I think will very much be on our radar screens moving forward.
Absolutely, and that's something that a lot of the allies would be skeptical as well, Commander Jaitley, isn't it? I mean, so far, we've seen all of the Arab world nations, all of the Gulf countries facing the brunt for being bases for the United States, for being on the side of Israel and United States. And at some point, patience is going to run thin and patience is eventually going to run out.
See, the problem is there are so many countries who were not liking the reign of terror unleashed by Ayatollah Khomeini and then Ali Khomeini later on. If you see Iran before 1979 and after 79, they have really tortured so many people. And you can say the 50% of the population, the women folk, who used to participate in each and every activity before 1979, they were thrown back to their homes with burqas, black burqas. This was too much for them to absorb and to just accept it as it is. So they retaliated. So there have been a simmering anti-establishment things going on in Israel all the time. Since 1979, let me tell you. And last few months, few years, the uprising started in a big way. There were so many agitations. And a lady who just went to watch a football match, she was hanged. Can you imagine that? And there are so many cases and thousands. Now that uprising only can help in overthrowing this regime. Just killing a few, the next chaps will take over. Then the next will take over. Then the next will take over. Only the Iranian people themselves can change the regime, let me tell you. US cannot change the regime. Israel cannot change the regime. It's the Iranian people themselves.
But they perhaps just want someone pliable, someone that they can control and then
Correct.
control the entire region, not just Iran. I mean, that's something that seems to be the end game here. But I do want you to stay on with us, and I want our other guests to indulge me as well as we talk about where this war is headed, and can the US actually continue to drag this on as they claim they would want to until those goals are achieved. According to the US president, he says that we have an infinite number of resources, that stockpiles are higher and better than ever. He says that the United States has virtually unlimited supplies, but is that actually the case? The country can fight wars indefinitely is what US President Donald Trump said. He said we're fully stocked, we're fully prepared. His Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, just a short while ago echoed that message. But behind the scenes, there seems to be some unease. And what reports are also suggesting is that the administration, in fact, is planning meetings with major US defense contractors. Why is that? Because stockpiles are depleting. In 2 days from now, we're going to be seeing that crucial meeting take place at the White House, and discussions are going to be focused on accelerating weapons production. That scheduled meeting with top defense industry leaders at the White House is to replenish supplies amid this military strikes that involve Iran. So for how long can they actually drag this out as they claim they would? And Coach, I want to ask you that, it's one thing about rhetoric, it's one thing to say that we will ensure that we reach the logical conclusion of this particular war, but financially, militarily, can the US afford to drag this on for as long as they really want to?
In this situation, I mean, the forever is sort of a variable term because, forever only encapsulates how long the other side can enable themselves, right? So like a market can remain insolvent more than you can remain irrational. And so in a situation here, Trump and Hegseth both have stressed for tier 2 and tier 3 munitions, the type of munitions that would not be highly kinetic, hypersonic, precision, nuclear, EMP, these kind of specialized weapons. In these general munitions, we have, compared to the time frame of expending them, an unlimited supply. And the idea that we couldn't ramp that up in the United States domestically is crazy. We have the absolute best international defense industry possible. Now, financially, I mean, the goal isn't to run a forever war. The goal isn't to just make defense contractors rich by bombing people. And so there has to be balance there because the American people, especially Donald Trump's supporters, are not going to support a forever war, especially going into the midterm. So Trump has to be tactical here. And also, we have to be realistic that, again, the U.S. output manufacturing supply in this place is unmatched. The Russians can produce munitions at this great rate, but if the Russians can do it, we can do it much better than them. And we have the stockpiles verified and unverified. And President Trump has gone around and placed those munitions in strategic countries all around our different proxy countries in the Middle East, whether that's in Qatar, whether that's in Turkey, whether that's anywhere. We have created an entire ring around Iran with these weapons, or allies in Israel. And so in that situation, I'm not at all concerned about the lack of munitions. I am, however, concerned about the lack of will from the U.S. Congress, and we'll have to find out how that happens.
And speaking of that lack of will, because there were some senators, some congressmen who came out and have publicly voiced their concerns of what really the strategy is of the Trump administration, which is why I do want to play out some sound bites and some reactions that we've seen from the Senate minority leader and other senators as well, who've come out and said that after a congressional hearing, we were more confused than ever before. Let's listen into those reactions before I get in more voices on our panel.
I left the intelligence briefing more concerned than reassured. If the case for war were strong, it would be consistent. Instead, the rationales change by the hour. Regime change, nuclear weapons, missiles, defense, preemptive. Which is it? When the justification keeps shifting, a strategy is missing. There is no strategy.
I just left a classified briefing on Iran, and it only confirmed what we already knew. Donald Trump is waging an illegal war, and he has no plan to end it. Today, he said we attacked Iran because he had a feeling, but we know the truth. Trump is lying about Iran's nuclear capacity. He's lying about Iran's missile capabilities, and he's dragging the United States into another endless war in the Middle East.
Owen Alterman, I want to ask you this. I mean, stockpiles aren't unlimited, and it's day 5. Tehran is retaliating. Was there some miscalculation perhaps on part of Israel and of the United States? Did you actually think that this would go on for as long as it did, and that Tehran would keep hitting you back for as long as they're doing it so?
The war is obviously unpredictable, but I think it's too early to make the call on whether there was or wasn't a miscalculation. Analysts here, and I suspect in many other places, are seeing this now as a race. Who can wear down the other side faster?
Correct.
Can the United States and Israel
it's
destroy
an attritional
Iran's
war at the
capacity?
moment.
Right. Well, in a sense, can the United States and Israel destroy Iran's capacity to launch its missiles faster than Iran can force the United States and Israel, and for that matter, the Gulf states, to deplete their supplies of interceptors? That's the way it's being framed in some senses here. Exactly who's going to win that race is what we don't know. We heard again how much, again, just most recently in the last few hours from the Pentagon, just how much the strikes in practice have gone down by 86% in terms of missiles, 73% in terms of drones. Those are the numbers given by the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States, Dan Raisin-Kane. So that's in terms of strikes, but in terms of how much of the capacity has been hit, that's an open question. Some of this, from what we understand, is deep underground and hard to hit. And yes, interceptors of missiles at this range, as opposed to the short-range interceptors, for example, of Israel's Iron Dome system, which are not relevant for Iran, they are expensive. They take a long time to produce. But this is one of the unknowns. You're right that this is one of the open questions of the war, but it is still an open question, not a closed one.
Well, we'll see for how long this drags on and who wears who out, who tires the enemy out in this particular case. That's really is going to decide when and how this war ends. But I thank you, gentlemen, for joining us here and sharing your perspective on this.